Welcome back, people. This is BasilMillwood, and today is the recap of the last round of the Elise Steenkamp game I played in. So far, I'm on 6 out of 6 points, and this game would be the deciding factor between getting first place or not. And let's get into the game. So I was playing white here, and my opponent was Anton Schultz, a 1371 rated player. The game started off with c4, which is the English opening, and my opponent played d6. Now, as for how often this move order is played, to put it simply, in master level games, this is seen, let me tell you, 1% of the time. Now for the database I'm using Litzes here. So for both the Litzes side of the database as well for the master database. So for in the master games you get this about 1% of the time, and in the Litzes database you get this about, well, I don't actually see d6 being played in. It's played 4% of the time. So there's no real preparation on my side necessarily for d6 as the first move, but I knew that this looked a lot like the start of the King's Indian. That's more or less what I thought when this happened. Now, if you don't know what the King's Indian defense is, or also Piet, the Piet is basically d6, knight f6, g6, bishop to g7, castle, and at some point you play e5. It's a system that is pretty good. So I played c4, he played e6, and I decided let's just play knight f3. Admittedly, knight c3 is also fine. Knight f3 is just developing a piece. It's not doing that much. I was expecting him to possibly go into this King's Indian at this point, and I had a sort of line that transposes to King's Indian main line. So he played knight f6, and, well, I was seeing if he's going to play King's Indian or the old Indian line. So I played knight c3. Now the idea is, in this position, is if he plays e5, I play d4. Immediately striking in the center, and the best move for me is actually as to take the pawn on d4. If he doesn't do that, well, it gets a little bit tricky, but the main idea is that he can't get his g6 easily, and bishop on g7, it's probably he's gonna most likely have to put his bishop on e7 and castle, and it would not be a mainline King's Indian, but it would be very interesting. But he didn't play e5. Instead, he played g6, going on with the idea of putting his pieces, getting the setup, if you will. And I continued playing d4. He played bishop to g7, and I played e4. This is pretty much the normal variation of the King's Indian, and at this point he just castled. I played bishop to e2, and he played knight e5. Sorry, e5. At this point I don't have to respond because there's no immediate threat. So I castled, and he played knight c6. So far, we've been actually following pretty much theory all the way for King's Indian in this position. What I find to be extremely interesting is I will tell you where my theory ends for the opening and where I have to start to think for myself, and I'll tell you also where, and okay, I still had to think, but a lot of this is close to my prep. And also I'll tell you how far it was book moves after I started thinking, or rather moves that was played in master games. And so I played d5 because, well, you don't necessarily have to, but this is more or less mainline idea of playing d5, and at the end of the day what black wants to do is play f4 and launch a kingside pawn attack. And the idea is, if the King's Indian gets everything it wants, I will be killed on the king's side, I will be checkmated, and I won't be able to stop it. But on the other hand, white is trying to play on the queen side, and that's whoever plays. So black is playing on the king side, white is playing on the queen side, and whoever gets first to the other side and makes the most breakthroughs on that side will most likely win the battle of the game. Also probably the opening. So he played knight to e7, and I played b4, and the idea of b4 is to play c5 and, well, yes, try and start to undermine his pawn structure. I would probably take on d6 in this position, and it gives me the open c file for him as well, but his play is on the king side, so he can't fully, try and get his rook on c8, whereas I am almost fully developed. We're similarly developed. He just has less space, and that's also part of the King's Indian. Is black is willing to say, I have less space to play in, but I've got this extremely strong attack, whereas white doesn't have the space disadvantage, but, well, he has to survive this attack. And so I played b4 and he played a5. So my knowledge actually ended at the move a5. This I did not know. My knowledge goes that if black plays knight e8, you play c5, they play f5, you play knight to d2, and this is pretty much up to where I know the position. That's pretty much it. And also I know that black is supposed to play f4 here. That's all I really knew about the up till where I know theory. But a5 is still a book move. This is a move that has been played in the King's Indian openings between masters. And also, if you're wondering, when I played b4, it transposed to the King's Indian defense bayonet attack. But anyway, so he played a5, and I decided, well, I don't want to play a3 to defend the pawn, because the problem is, if I were to play c5, he could take on b4. If I play a3, he can still take on b4, and I can't take back because my rook would be hanging at the end of that line. Rook on a1. The computer thinks taking on a5 is fine, but what I played was still correct, and that was to play bishop a3. And the simple idea is, if he takes on, so I develop my piece, and if he takes on b4, I take back with my bishop, and then I play c5 still. He then played a takes on b4, I played bishop takes on b4, and he played knight to e8. So this is where we left opening theory. As this is no longer a book move, this is actually what the computer considers inaccuracy. The computer wanted black to play either b6 or bishop to g4, or even rook e8. But he played e8, continuing with this plan, which is what I expected, and also I didn't think he would play anything else. I think this is a very, I think this was okay. But yes, so I played c5, and the computer here thinks the best move for black is to take on c5, but he continued with f5, which again, so it is the best move for black in this position. And I just decide I'll take on c6. He'll have to take back with his pawn. If he doesn't take back with his pawn but takes with the knight on e8, it would be an interesting game, but this pawn on e5 would be very weak in the long term as it has no pawn defending it. So I played c takes on d6, and he played c takes on d6, which is what I think it's fine. My next move here was knight d2, yes, following more or less what I think was supposed to be the best moves, because I've seen this in games, and this is indeed what the computer thinks to be the best move. And one of the I can't necessarily tell you if leaving the knight there was would have been bad, but I can tell you the idea that the computer had for me was to play knight to c4, so rerouting the knight from f3 to c4. But I didn't really have that in mind when I played d2, and he played f4, and this is apparently a mistake, as the computer wanted black to play f takes on e4, which, I'll be honest, is a very counterintuitive move to what your plan is. Like, if I was black in this position, I would also have played f4, and I wouldn't have played f takes on e4, because the whole idea is I'm marching him down on the king's side. But this is apparently a mistake. And I decide at this point I don't know what I want to play. I was considering c4, knight c4 in this position, but I don't see how I'm going to put enough pressure on c6 to win it. Because he had the queen protecting it, he had the knight protecting it, and he could bring in his rook to protect it as well. And so I was looking at everything, and at some point I was saying, well, looking at the pawns and looking on what squares they are, my dark squared bishop is my good bishop, and his light squared bishop is his good bishop. And also I was thinking on the idea of piece activity, that the light squared bishop of mine isn't really that good at this point. It should actually be in front of the pawns, or at least that's what I think. Not sure that's exactly the case, but I was pretty sure to if your bishop is of the same color as your pawns, or the majority of your pawns is standing on the same colored square as your bishop should be in front of your pawns and not behind them. And so I played g4. Idea is just I've got some presence, and I will be taking his bishop, and if he takes my bishop with his bishop, I actually get my queen on g4, and it's very active, my queen. I could bring it to e6 with a check, and then I might actually have ideas. But yes, the computer wanted me to play knight c4, as I already said, and this is in fact an inaccuracy. It's not a mistake, but it is an inaccuracy, and he played bishop d7, which I believe was to play rook to c8 at that point. I played knight c4, attacking that pawn, because now he has only one defender on the pawn, since the bishop is actually blocking his queen. And at this point he decided to play rook f6, protecting the pawn. Now, you'll see the advantage went up for white here, and it's because rook f6 is a mistake, as it leads into a tactic where I'm up material, or at least up the exchange. So the only real move to take advantage of this mistake. If I didn't play it and I played something else which, you know, isn't bad, it's still better for white in this position, but I wouldn't have a +3 advantage. And the move is bishop takes d7. Now, the only way to take back is with his queen, and this leads to knight b6, forking the queen and the rook. He played queen d8, protecting the rook, or at least he's gonna take back on a8, and so I took knight takes a8, and he took queen takes on a8. My next move was to play queen to g4. Now, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, the better move here would have been to play queen a4, and the idea is let's trade queens. Without queens on the board, you can't checkmate me as black, and I have the better position. Also, I just remembered what was the other reason for me to trade the light squared bishops. I know in a lot of positions in the King's Indian, once the king side is fully, swarmed by the pawns of black, he would probably bring that bishop into the attack, most likely sacrifice it to open up the position and deliver checkmate, and I thought without the bishop it would be much harder to do that. I was also still aware of the fact that the more pieces I trade, the less chance there is of a win. And so I played queen g4 instead, because I still wanted to try and get in on squares like e6, d7. But a4 would have been probably better. And he has played queen d8 back. And at this point I decide I'm gonna put a rook on the only open file on the board. Completely open. Technically the B file is also an open file, but it's called the semi-open file. It's still considered an open file for white, since there's no longer a light squared white pawn on the B file. But the C file was completely open. There's no pawns in the way, so the rook is pretty well placed here. And also I realized after making the move, there's also the added benefit of that if the pawn on d5 ever moved, there is no discovered attack on my rook on a1. So I played rook a to c1, and he decided to play h5, trying to kick my queen out of the position. Here I made my second inaccuracy of the game, and instead of playing the move, which makes a lot of sense looking at it after the game, I played queen to g5, and the idea is just you can't actually attack me that easily. You might be wondering, but what about bishop to h6? Besides the fact that it's hanging the bishop, that's pretty much it. It's hanging the bishop. He has to play king h7 and then play bishop to h6 to really threaten my queen. But I was just thinking I'm just going to dance around on c5 and h4. But the computer wanted me to play really one of two moves, either Queen H3 or Queen F3. Queen F3 of course stops the pawn from moving and still keeps an eye on the H5 pawn. And H3 pretty much does the same thing, except I think F3 is better because it at least stops F3, pawn to F3 itself. And so I played Queen G5 and he played King to H7, which makes a lot of sense. But I didn't move my queen, it didn't have to move at this point. I just tried to get my plans rolling, and the move I played here was A4. And the whole idea behind A4 was I wanted to play knight to C5, putting the second attacker on D6. But the problem with that is he could play Queen B6, skewing my bishop and knight. And so I was thinking, if I play A4, I can put my knight on B5, and if I play A5, he can't put his queen at all on B6. And if he tries to do some pawn moves, well, I could possibly get a passed pawn in that position. But he played so in this so it's an inaccuracy because the computer wants me to play rook to c2. Just getting my rook off the dark squares because he's gonna put his dark squared bishop on h6, and when the f pawn moves, I've got to move my rook as well. So instead of having to make the move with the rook later on, yeah, it's not that great. I could play a g3 at that point, just completely stopping any big ideas for black at that point. But I played a4 with my idea, and he played bishop h6. I then played queen h4 like my idea was, and again he couldn't easily attack me at this point because, well, to attack me would be to play g6, and that would drop the pawn on h5. That's what I thought when I looked at it, but I completely missed the idea of f3. And I looked at this in the game, and I had two places where I could put my rook. I could have put my rook on a1, or I could put my rook on c2. Now the computer doesn't even think a1 is an option, it thinks b1 is at least an option, but the reason was I thought keeping my rook on the c file is a good move, keeping it on the open file, and it's out of danger, and my rook on f1 could then go to b1 or a1. But I just ended up playing a5, and afterwards I thought that c2 was simply the better move, and unfortunately for me, it was. And this is my first mistake. So up to move 24, I've not made a single mistake or blunder. So that just means I've been outplaying my opponent up to this point, and as you can see looking at the eval bar, the game is equal. I lost my advantage completely at this point. But I still had, I think, the better position at the end of it all because, how to put it, it's hard for black to make moves. But he sort of gave the advantage back a bit, making it an advantage, not necessarily a winning advantage, but still advantage when he played f takes on g2. And I decided I'm not going to take his pawn here with my king. I'm just going to use it as an umbrella pawn. And what an umbrella pawn is, if you're wondering, is a pawn that is it's basically your opponent's pawn, and it protects you from your opponent's pieces, since they can't actually take through the pawn. The pawn stops it completely, unlike your own pawns. Now the best move here was actually as to take on g2, but I played rook f to b1, which is the second move that the ensign prefers, and again it's back to equal. I had a chance to be better, but I'm still slightly better. Like, it's not 0-0 in evaluation wise, it's not a draw, but I could have had perhaps a better position, but I didn't think it was a good idea to take on g2. It would be much better just to move my rook, get it active, because if I took on g2, there's all kinds of attacks he could possibly do, but yeah, a lesson for next time. He played rook f4, attacking my queen. And again, you see the accuracy, the eval bar moving. And the reason for that is the computer wanted white to play, black to play g5. And the line goes after g5, queen takes, and black plays g6, completely kicking the queen out of the position. Okay, the queen could go to g4, but d1 is just the better move. And actually, I played the wrong move there. Sorry, it wants black to play g6, not g7. But yeah, so the idea is that you get this strong attack flowing. But yeah, he played rook f4, which makes a lot of sense to me. You're attacking the queen, getting it to move out, and you're starting to unravel the knots in your position. You are actually getting ready to develop your pieces. I just played queen h3, and he played g5. I looked at this and thought beforehand, but this is just wrong. I can just take your pawn. It's not gonna be a problem. It's a hanging pawn, but the computer actually prefers knight e2 attacking the rook. And of course, the question, I didn't think this was possible because he has plays h4, but then you play queen e6. Now the queen is really powerful, and yeah, black's position isn't that great, all things considered, because you could possibly give checks, and so the move black would have to play here to still have the best moves is like knight to g6, and well, I actually don't touch my queen in this position. I just start to further maneuver my position. Apparently bishop d2 is the next move, but anyways, I took on h5, and as you can see, it's now it's pretty much equal, because, well, he will now play g6 once more, and my queen could be close to being trapped, and of course also the move, I think at some point he could even play knight to h4 and fully start to deliver this incredibly strong attack. But neither of us played this line. In fact, he has played queen d7 now. At this point, I still think, even looking at the ensign, I think this was the time when I should have taken his pawn on g2. As if I didn't take on g2, well, I think I would have had the game, but, well, if I took on g2, of course, this, if you look at the line that the computer gives, this is just very bad. Now, for example, you play this, and it's really hard to, actually, you just lose your queen. And the idea is you sacrifice a rook, king has to take, and queen takes queen. And now black is the one with the material advantage. So the move the computer actually wants is just knight to e2. And the move black would, well, black would still play the g7 idea, but let me just make sure I've got this correct. Yes. Now, funnily enough, the idea for here is just to give up your queen. So you take on f4, knight takes, and on h5, knight takes on h5, and you're threatening a fork. And basically what you got for your queen was a rook and a minor piece. And well, I'll be honest, a blind spot for me is looking at ideas of trading off a queen for multiple pieces. I've done it in a previous game in this tournament. It's in my second recap video, but yes, it's definitely a blind spot, and I think it's generally just a hard move to play. So, but admittedly, that is pretty much the only line that's good for white to fully get the advantage. Otherwise, rook to b3 is an idea, and yeah, it is what it is. But I played a5, continuing with my idea, and now you can see the computer evaluates black as better. Knight g7 comes in. I move my queen back to e2, and it's just to stop the rook from moving to f3. And he plays queen h3. Now, again, this looks all natural to me. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but the reason why the computer thinks this is a mistake is because f3 is possible, which I actually did not ever think was possible, because isn't this just losing a pawn? And the idea is you take here on g2, queen takes on g2, and he can't win the queen. And so white is better in this position. The move that black has to play here is actually knight to g6, yes, bringing more pieces to the attack. For example, playing h3 and getting this, yes, a very massive attack. But maybe it would have given me the best chances. Otherwise, other than h3, queen h3, to again, instead of playing queen h3, if a computer wants black just to play knight to g6. But anyways, black played queen h3, and I played queen h3, saying, hey, let's trade queens. Let's trade queens. So with queens off the board, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna win. The position is better for me, and yeah, if I were to go through with this idea, you can see it is indeed better for white. So black wouldn't take. In fact, black played the following move, which is the winning idea for black, and it's just to say, hey, no, how about you lose your queen instead? And I played the best move that I could play at this point, and okay, well, the computer also thinks taking on f3 is an idea, because, well, the computer thinks white is lost. But I played queen e1, and the idea was just to protect my rook, because now if I move my queen, and it doesn't protect the knight, he can win it. He played rook f4, and again, the reason I, in this position, actually played this was to stop him from playing rook h3, because if he plays rook h3, I'm dead. I'm not surviving this, to put it simply. Let me play this. Knight to g5 as an example. He's just gonna play rook h4, and it's forced checkmate. There's no way for me to stop it. So it makes sense that he has moved his rook back to f4. It's possibly a draw offer. We can repeat the position and just take a draw. Otherwise, he's going to continue with his h3 idea. And again, the computer thinks that f3 is a good move, but it lost a lot of its good points, because, well, now when rook takes, again, the idea is you play queen e2, you could take here, and now it's back to equal because I just take. And it's very hard for white to, for black to do much Instead, black actually has the computer just wants black to play queen h5 and continue with the ideas. But anyways, I played bishop takes, and my whole idea here was if he continues playing rook h4, as you can see, this is better for white. Is I just take the last pawn. I've got this passed pawn ready, 3 squares away from queening, and he actually can't take on h2. But I missed his defensive resource, knight to g6, just protecting the pawn. And now, yeah, black is lost. White is lost. White is completely lost. And I, well, decide to just play queen e3, trying to get the queen trade again, but now it doesn't work. Or rather, it could work. Like if I played this, black's best move would, again, the problem now is the knight is most definitely hanging, but again, black has now this new resource of playing knight to f4, and the idea is pretty simple. So let's say I play queen e3, saying, hey, take my queen, which of course that still leads to checkmate. Basically everything in this position leads to checkmate. But if I made the move like this, saying I don't see how you're now gonna break through, black actually sacrifices his queen. I'm forced to take back, and the rook comes in with check. I can't take the pawn or the rook because, well, the knight protects both. The king will have to move back to g1, and rook h1 is checkmate. I didn't see that at all, that was an idea. My opponent showed it, and it's a very beautiful checkmate pattern, but what I instead did was, I think I could survive if he takes my queen, and I put my rook on e1. But this is still a lost, this is still losing. If he took and I took back, it's still losing. As the queen will just drop back to c8. And, well, yeah, it would be a game. I still think there is some work to be done for black to fully win, but it's still a game. But I missed the idea of g4 completely, just hitting my queen. And yeah, the best move for white actually here is just to take the bishop, and the queen has to take back, because if the king takes, I mean, it's still winning, but knight e2 is now an idea, and simply put, the knight will drop to g3 and stop a lot of ideas. I'm pretty sure that's mostly the idea, because once black, for example, plays rook b3, I'm honest, I'm not sure. I see now why. So one of the reasons why the knight move is important is it stops knight to f4, enabling that checkmate idea. So yes, so this would have lengthened the game, possibly giving me a chance to come back into the game. But instead of that, I decide let's take the rook. Without the rook, he can't have his battery. And I was thinking he's probably just going to take with his pawn. He's not going to take with his queen, as that allows some counterplay. And I thought, well, and after he did this, I saw why it's basically checkmate. Because his next move is gonna be a bishop to f4, and there's no way to really stop it. The computer has reevaluated the position and thinks it's mate in the 11 at best, and it starts with knight e2 once more. Again, the computer thinks, why not just play, not even to take. I was thinking taking is, good for him. It probably is, but like knight f4 it's just the idea is just gonna take my bishop, my knight at the end of the line. Of course, I could take on e5. He's gonna take with check. I'm gonna be forced to take back with my rook, and then he's gonna take the pawn. And now there's a passed pawn here, and it's relatively well messed. I can't really stop it. I could just play a pawn move because playing a6. You can't play e4 because I'm just gonna take. And that's well, let me check the full line. Basically, white doesn't have any moves. And yeah, so just bring in your knight once more. Rook takes f4. It's a this is disgusting. I can't. I have to basically take back. If I don't take back, it's checkmate in 1 or 2. So if I take back, the knight will take. It's threatening the rook, and if let's say I put my rook back on e1. Then actually the queen comes to f3, and this is again a very big threat. As if I can't stop this, it's checkmate. I would possibly play h4, and then the queen just moves back. And well, this is a lost. It's just lost. That is to say, after I got into this position, I played bishop to c7 with the idea of possibly pushing the pawn and getting a passed pawn. I was thinking this is probably my best chance, but if he plays bishop f4, I'm just gonna resign. And yeah, he plays bishop f4. So yeah, I lost. Which, I'll be honest, yeah. A lot of compliments to my opponent. He's a nice dude, and he played really well. It's more, I'll say this, up to move 24, I outplayed him. But from there on out, I started making the wrong decisions, and ultimately it ended with me getting checkmated on the board. And yeah, I lost this game. If you want to know the accuracy of the game, black played on 73.9% accurate and white played on 64.6% accurate. And estimated ratings, black was at 1350 and white was 1150. And let me be clear about this. Of course, I'm terribly disappointed, or disappointed in the result. But I can't wait to play Anton again. He was a great dude to play against, great dude to talk with, and yeah, next time we'll see who wins in a tournament. At least in a match between the two of us. I'm not saying I'll get into a position where I could win the tournament. One of the things that also sort of haunts me is he offered to draw early in the game, and I decided to say no. And that would have actually allowed me to get second place at the very least, but I thought my position was better at that point, and yeah, so it haunts me a bit, but I'm not unhappy with my decisions that I made, and I'm also not I'm unhappy with some of them. Like, instead of rook to c2, I played rook a1. But otherwise, I'm not unhappy with my decision not to take the draw, because, well, I think it was the correct move to make at that point. But so, instead of getting first place, I got fourth place. And yeah, well, yeah, this is the game. I'm gonna be playing in the next tournament. It's gonna be July 6th, and I'll be making a series of recaps, one game per video, instead of making multiple games in one video. This video is already longer than I intended. I was thinking of making it 30-minute stops. But leading up to that event, I guess first I need to check out with people at my club if it's fine if I can make recap videos on the club games I played, or I play with people. And I'm planning on making some opening videos as well, also ideas of how to play the game, just what should you try and think of. But I'm planning on making some opening videos, so tomorrow I'll most likely be posting a video on the Sicilian defense, namely the Mengunari variation, also known as the Mengunari Gambit. So you guys have something to look at. Anyways, everybody, peace out. Until next time. Get out of here.